Dissipation of the Darkness, subtitle, or the Kingdom of the Antichrist. Jose Cicero Honorato. Part 4. Mr. Lawrence is bound, finally, so that from now on he will not be able to engage anyone, nor authorize anyone other than Mr. Awad Khoury to translate this history to Arabic and Turkish. Finally, we invoke the kindness of God, so he may grant to our agreement his most exalted and divine protection. Made in duplicate in Rio de Janeiro, August 12, 1897. Signed, Lawrence G. S. Lawrence, Awad Khoury. Charged with the private affairs of His Excellency the President of Republic of the United States of Brazil. Dissipation of the Darkness. Origin of Masonry. First section. Introduction to the work. One part of this introduction pertains to me, Lawrence, son of George, son of Samuel, son of Jonas, son of Samuel Lawrence, of Russian origin and, at present, a resident in Rio de Janeiro, capital of Brazil, in the year 1895. The other part pertains to some of my ancestors, who inherited and bequeathed this history. How many learned men and historians who carried out our lengthy investigations to come to know that the history of the foundation of the Masonic organization and its true origin arrived at no conclusion. Their efforts were in vain. Some believe that the origin of the Masonic Association goes back to Adam. Others believe that it goes back to Moses. Others to David. Others to Solomon. Others to Christ, etc., etc. Innumerable are those who spent their time in the search without coming to realize their longings. The number of investigators who, together with their relatives, friends, and helpers, met their downfall in this work is incredible. To the aforementioned are added all the heads of the religions of the entire world, especially in Europe, Turkey, Egypt, and America. Whom else should I add? I would add the Masonic family itself, including the presidents of the Grand Orients, the presidents of the lodges, and the affiliates who hold high degrees, except the 9 men who have, respectively, inherited from their corresponding ancestors the secret of the foundation of the mysterious force. It is deplorable. All of the investigations come to nothing. They have not achieved any result. The number of those investigators from the foundation of the association up to our days, the end of the 19th century, can be estimated in the hundreds of thousands. I received these truths from my father, who in turn received them from his father, and he from his father, retrospectively to the origin of the lineage, the 9 founders in the year 43 after Christ. Thus it is that I, Lawrence, son of George, son of Samuel, son of Jonas, son of Samuel Lawrence, of Russian origin, the last descendant of the descendants of the one of the owners of the history, say, I inherited from my father a manuscript composed by our ancestors in the Hebrew language and translated by one of them to the Russian language, another of them translated into English. Our ancestor, Jonas, introduced in the manuscript a series of events, this history thus being produced by him and his ancestors. Jonas arranged it and divided it into 2 sections. He wanted to publish it, but various obstacles impeded it: health, economic means, and political events. He and his wife, Janet, conceived the idea of the publication of this history. On finding themselves incapable of doing so, they commended its publication to their son, my grandfather, Samuel. Jonas died without seeing his longing fulfilled. My grandfather Samuel, the son of Jonas, who is the son of Samuel Lawrence, here addresses his words to his son, George, my father. Samuel said to his son George, Son, here you see these introductions headed by a list of names. These names correspond to the successive heirs of this history since the renewal of the association, the mysterious force, when it changed its name to Freemasonry. They include Joseph Levi. Joseph Levi is one of the renewers of the association. He is a Jew and an heir of the history from his ancient ancestors, who, in turn, inherited from Moab Levi, one of the 9 founders. It was our ancestor, Joseph, who conceived the idea of changing the name of the association, the mysterious force, to Freemasonry, and reforming the statutes. Here you have the details. He was sent to London with his son, Abraham, and a friend named Abraham Abud. All Jews and descendants of their heirs of the history are very well financed. They had made efforts to enter another city, and, not having success, they headed for London. There they met two influential and knowledgeable persons who served as suitable elements to accomplish their purposes. They are John Désagoules and a companion called George. After having strengthened the friendship among them, Joseph Levi revealed the name of the association, quote, the mysterious force, unquote, and related to his two friends, in the synthesis and with discretion, some parts of the history, concealing its fundamental secrets. He also made it known to them that for a long time it was inactive, almost dead, needing for its renewal the change of name and the reform of the statutes in such a way that the new statutes and the changed name might attract many members, thus it would grow. With eloquence and cleverness, Joseph Levi succeeded in convincing his two friends, Désagoules and George, of the necessity of reviving the association. Having achieved this initial success, they separated on condition that they would meet again, each one of them bringing 3 names appropriate for the new association, from which the specific name would come. The next meeting was held 10 days later. Each one presented his names, the one approved being one of those proposed by Joseph Levi, Freemasonry. It was August 25th, 1716. Abraham, son of Joseph Levi, who had witnessed the 2 sessions, said, "This name had preference over the 2 others for 2 reasons. First, because it is the same name that some Italian architects adopted in the 13th century, Freemasons. And second, because it was a suitable expression of the ancient signs and symbols used in the association. The mysterious force, symbols that pertain to construction and to architecture, proposed by Hiram Abud, one of the founders, for the purpose of concealing the origin of the association, attributing it to the epochs prior to Jesus. In the second section, surprising details concerning this matter will be seen. Désagoules approved the words of my father, adding, in the third place, present-day architects and builders have associations, syndicates, and lodges where they gather to fortify and dignify their profession. With this name, then, we can gather all in a single association without anyone knowing our purposes. And fourth, these 2 terms, masonry, construction, and mason, that are encountered such antiquity, since antiquity, will be a thick veil over the secret of the origin of the foundation. And besides, without doubt, they will increase the prestige of the association. I would also add kings, nobles, and governors, wise men, discoverers, and investigators, historians, authors, writers, and poets, orators, legislators, and journalists, lawyers, judges, doctors, and pharmacists, merchants, industrialists, and sportsmen, even the illiterate to whom this investigation would not belong. All these mentioned, integrated in the different classes of the community, Masons and non-Masons, form a true army that pursues the secret. I divide these investigators into 3 groups. 1. The historians who spend their days and nights in study and reading, trying in vain to come to know the secret of the true history of the foundation of Masonry. 2. The learned authors who try to establish something about the secret, all in vain, yet they continue with their studies without having reached their goal. 3. The associates and their collaborators who have not gotten anywhere in spite of their efforts. Footnote. In the Hebrew manuscript and its French version, Abraham Abud said, I believe that George is his first name. Désagoules always called him George. Our arrangements were with Désagoules, but he was always present at the meetings and participated in the discussions. End footnote. Our ancestor, Abraham Levi, before his death, added, Désagoules specified that those people who joined the lodges before 1717 in London were Masons, in the sense that they were engineers, architects, builders, apprentices, but they had no connection with the association, the mysterious force that began true Masonry, unquote. For that purpose, 5 men met, Levi, Désagoules, and the companions mentioned above, and they approved the addition of the term, quote, free, unquote, thus unequivocally concealing the date of its foundation from the rest of the people in general and the members and associates in particular. John de Segule and his companion began to demand that Levi show him the history. Levi had made it known to them that it was translated into English, that 3 of the inherited manuscripts had been lost recently, 4 had been lost long ago, and there remained only his manuscript and 1 other. Such declarations excited Desegule and George extremely. The reason why they insisted on the need for a suitable copy, so that with said copy it would be so much easier for them to form a new statute. They showed themselves so faithful to the principles, desires, and doctrines of Levi that they succeeded in convincing him to deliver a copy to them. It was delivered to them, a time passed during which they read it. The 5 met again and decided to summon some friends on the pretext of establishing a, quote, united association, unquote. The true purpose was the renewal of the association, the mysterious force, and its resurrection with the new name agreed upon by the 5, and the restoration of the first principal lodge, Jerusalem. Thus Levi wanted it. On March 10, 1717, they invited several architects and acquaintances. The invited were presided over by a wise man named Dr. James Anderson, who was a friend of Desegule. After lengthy discussions, they reached on accord and designated June 24, 1717, to realize a great meeting. Meanwhile, Levi was preparing his son, Abraham, for the great events of the future. Days later, Abraham Levi journeyed to Portugal accompanied by Abraham Abud, his relative. The latter is the descendant of Hiram Abud, one of the founders and owners of this copy. Between March 10th and June 24th, a great conflict was begun between Levi and Desegule and George because of their refusal to return the copy. This conflict ended with the assassination of Levi and the disappearance of the aforementioned English copy, the Hebrew copy, and all of Levi's papers. The details of this event are recorded in the second section of this history, where the principal motives for the assassination of our ancestor, Joseph Levi, are made known. Abraham and Joseph Levi said, quote, "The meeting was realized on June 24th, 1717, and the first lodge was founded after a violent discussion, as some of those who were present at the meeting related to me on my return from Portugal."